And empathy has two qualities. One is the understanding part of it. This is just a regular definition, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another. And the emotional part. Empathy has basically two channels. One is the body channel. If you talk with a sad person, you're going to adopt a sad expression and a sad posture, and before you know it, you feel sad. And that's sort of the body channel of emotional empathy, which many animals have. Your average dog has that also. That's why people keep mammals in the home and not turtles or snakes or something like that, who don't have that kind of empathy. Loneliness creates a deep psychological wound, one that distorts our perceptions and scrambles our thinking. It makes us believe that those around us care much less than they actually do. It makes us really afraid to reach out, because why set yourself up for rejection and heartache when your heart is already aching more than you can stand? I was in the grips of real loneliness back then, but I was surrounded by people all day, so it never occurred to me. But loneliness is defined purely subjectively. It depends solely on whether you feel emotionally or socially disconnected from those around you. And I did. There is a lot of research on loneliness, and all of it is horrifying. Loneliness won't just make you miserable, it will kill you. I'm not kidding. Chronic loneliness increases your likelihood of an early death by 14%. 14%. Loneliness causes high blood pressure, high cholesterol. It even suppresses the functioning of your immune system, making you vulnerable to all kinds of illnesses and diseases. One of the things I do in my psychology seminar is I assign papers to students, and then I extract out propositions from the papers. And they're propositions that are debatable. Well, what you want to do as an educator is you don't want to put forward a specific point of view. Not when what you're trying to do is to discuss a contentious issue. What you want to do is teach people how to take an argument apart and formulate a response. And to do that, it's actually extraordinarily useful to arbitrarily assign positions to people. It's like, I don't care what you think, you're pro on this topic, generate an argument. And what that does is it vastly widens people's conceptualizations of the argumentative space. Because most really contentious issues, gun control, abortion, those sorts of things, there is a lot to be said on both sides. They wouldn't be contentious issues otherwise. They're issues that don't go away. Well, why? Well, because they're so complex. They don't lend themselves to easy unitary solutions. One of the things you want to learn if you're educated is that on any complex subject there's a lot to be said. So the three things that I think it really takes to be an effective manager were these. First of all, learn to delegate. You know, the most important thing is you have to trust your people to do work themselves, and if you're in the business of overseeing every single decision they make, you're not going to be a very effective manager because you'll be stretched too thin, and you'll certainly never be able to rise to higher levels of management where you're overseeing dozens or hundreds or even thousands of people. So that's the first thing. The second is work hard to understand what the people underneath you do. There's this tendency to think you know. If I came up through one skill, as I oversee people with different skills, I'm just gonna trust them to get it right, and you have to. Of course, you're not gonna be able to understand what everybody on your team does all day, but if you can understand their motivations, their terminology, their way of communicating, you're gonna be a lot better as a manager. And finally, this is a kind of simple thing, but have as many one-on-one meetings as you possibly can. I think one thing that there's a lot of evidence is that having one-on-one meetings, especially with your direct reports, is one of the strongest predictors of success as a manager. Big meetings aren't good. Little meetings can be very good. It's time-consuming. It is hard, but it's a thing that really correlates with success as a manager. Now, what's really interesting about this time is that because of coronavirus, kids have all this time to self-reflect and self-assess. And so we should be actively promoting meta-learning during this time. And so what I've suggested is that we promote the idea of a learning journal. So the idea is this. Let kids decide their own learning path, let them decide what they want to learn. It could be if they want to learn how to cook. It could be they want to learn how to drive a car. It doesn't matter. What's important is that they write down their learning journey, and so there are three components to a learning journal. First is to define the goal concretely and precisely. It's better to say I want to be able to run a marathon in less than 4 hours than it is to say I want to finish first in a marathon. Second is to write down the learning process. So think of a cooking recipe and writing down how you cook something. The third and most important component of a learning journal is to write down your observations, collect data, self-reflect, and develop new learning strategies for yourself. And during this process, teachers don't go away. Teachers play a very important role in that they become coaches. I would say that being a coach has three main functions. I encourage people to provide feedback to one another. It's a gift. It's also often part of your job. But too often, we don't go far enough. So I suggest that we create psychological contracts. You don't do it with everybody, but it's an opportunity to agree to exchange extremely honest feedback by mutual consent in a safe and trusting way. I say to somebody who trust, whose opinion matters to me, I'm getting up on stage. Let me know afterwards. Was clear? Did I give too much information, too little information? Did I move too much? Did I engage with the audience? Tell me the truth. That's an immediate request for honest feedback, and we are creating a psychological contract. You're not going out of bounds if you tell me exactly what you think. I also tell people if they're going into a meeting, pick the person who's going to pull on their ear to let you know you're going off topic, whether your data is really not holding up in that room, and getting an immediate sense from somebody, the unvarnished truth about what's going on. We know that the more comfortable we feel around someone, the less effort we will make about how we appear, and conversely, the more anxious we are about the judgment of others, the more our reflection has the power to horrify us. The issue is never that of our appearance, it is about our sense of our vulnerability to humiliation. When we meet people who are perpetually sick with worry that they are not attractive enough, we should not rush in with physical compliments. This is only to foster and unwittingly reward an aggravating criterion of judgment. We should learn to spot the wound in their early relationships that have made it so hard for them to trust that they could matter to others in their basic state. And that therefore perpetually evokes in them an unflattering self-image. They are not ugly per se, they were when it mattered left painfully unloved and ignored to an extent that they are liable never to have recognized or mourned adequately. Their arrival in the world did not delight a few people as it should have done, and therefore need compassion, sympathy and emotional validation far more than they will ever require the tools of outward beautification. Feeling ugly stems from a deficit of love, never of beauty. When economists study gift giving, they're very concerned with one thing: waste. Let's say hypothetically that my grandmother buys me a sweater that I hate, and your grandmother buys you a sweater that you hate. Sorry, grandmothers. Before long, we're talking about billions of dollars in waste in the economy. Economists call it deadweight loss, and they estimate that up to 30% of the value of all gifts is wasted. That means the company's wasted time making the gift, it means the giver's wasted time giving it out, and it means the recipient's wasted time returning it. There's a way to fix this. There is a very specific gift that is always worth the exact same to both the giver and the receiver. It's called cash. The good thing about cash is that the receiver can always make use of 100% of its value. The bad thing about cold, hard cash is that it's cold. It doesn't say anything except, "Here, take some money." So this is a conundrum. Let's imagine you're about to hold a meeting to make an important decision. And you are in a hurry. Is it better to hold the meeting standing up or sitting down? Researchers from University of Missouri asked groups of people to imagine that they'd crashed on the moon, and then only a few pieces of equipment had survived the crash. The groups were asked to identify which bits of equipment were most important, and their decisions were compared to the correct answers supplied by NASA. Some of groups held their meetings standing up, and the others held them sitting down. So, why do humans feel awkwardness? According to Tai Toshiro, author of the appropriately titled book Awkward, this is part of human evolution. In hunter-gatherer times, sticking with social norms, like saying thank you when someone gives you something, or waiting your turn for food, was a way to keep tight-knit groups together and keep out anyone who might be a threat. Today we're still sensitive to tiny, even silly social customs, like responding to "How are you" with "Fine" as a sign of mutual respect. Studies say the right amount of eye contact during conversations is about 3.3 seconds. But awkward people don't instinctively do that. But when we don't look people in the eyes, it makes them feel socially ostracized. According to Toshiro's work, awkward people tend to look at other parts of the face, like the chin or the ear, more than the eyes. Therefore, they might end up alienating the person they're talking to, and missing out on important information about how that person might be feeling. The good news is that if your brain isn't great at social cues, it might be good at other stuff instead. Research shows that many autistic people are amazing at memory pattern recognition and problem solving. When the Second World War came to an end, the British took some German civilians around the Belsen concentration camp. But why they do this? To show them what their own soldiers had done during the war. It was reported that one of the civilians had said, "What terrible criminals these prisoners must have been to receive such treatment," not uttered by a guard, but by a civilian. The just world hypothesis is a cognitive bias in which we as human beings try to make sense of a world that is unfortunately unjust. We like to believe noble acts lead to reward, and bad actions result in punishment.